Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Shh. It's a podcast where we talk about love, intimacy, relationships, and everything that goes along with it. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Tila. I'm a sex educator from Vancouver, BC, and published author, and I love talking about sex and helping people connect with that part of themselves. So the topic for today is going to be soulmates. We've sort of done a couple episodes talking about different relationships. And I thought, we should talk about soulmates and love beliefs. And there's a lot of debate about whether or not soulmates actually exist. And if they do, does it make a difference if you are with yours or not? Relationships can be really tricky to navigate. And a lot of people feel like they fail at them. Finding a lasting relationship that is fulfilling can be really tough sometimes, and people feel that they're often very unlucky in love. And that, stems from the fact that people have a lot of different ideas about what a good relationship looks like. Some people feel like it's effortless when it's with the right person, while other people hold that, good relationships take work and effort to keep them alive. So, which is the truth? Is it a soulmate? Is the soulmate the answer to the perfect relationship? Or is it, that relationships do take some work regardless of whether or not you're with your soulmate? So I sort of want to talk about this sort of what we sort of mean by soulmate. And I know a lot of people have ideas about what a soulmate is, but, some people may not be familiar with the concept, or there's a lot of cultural differences in what we talk about in terms of soulmates. So here we're talking about soulmates are considered, kind of to be that person's perfect and true match. They are that person that just gets us, who we can't live without, and who is able to bring us like the ultimate happiness. We feel closer and more a part of our soulmate than we would with any other person. And we accept them and their faults without question and love them regardless. So that's a lot, there's a lot of beliefs that kind of go around that. Like, they can help you break through your own limitations and challenge you to live your life to the fullest. And they make you a better person. They complete you. That's something we've sort of talked about in another episode, so I won't rehash that here. But, there's a lot of different ways that people talk about soulmates. But one of the main key things is that a soulmate is a connection that is more than just a physical connection. You feel connected on a mental, emotional, even spiritual level. And often people feel like they say they knew their soulmate before, maybe in another life, or they just feel really familiar. And it really boils down to someone who you feel is your soulmate can make you feel really secure and protected. And that can make that relationship feel a lot more intense than any other that you've ever experienced. So there's this feeling of not needing limits with a person, and that you're able to be completely open, and that's okay. And lots of people have built their ideas of what perfect love is on this mission to find their soulmate. They feel that their soulmate is going to be the best match for them, and that no other person will do. And that their life may not be complete without this connection, and that they're not complete without this person in their life. Part of the problem with this concept of soulmates is that in many cases, we're often wrong about a person being our ultimate match. And this can leave people feeling disappointed or depressed and alone. And it can cause a lot of frustration when people are dating. The thought of having this perfect mate increases a lot of pressure that people feel to try and find that person. And dating is already really challenging for a lot of people. It's not an easy thing to do. The rules are always changing. The expectations are always changing. What we're looking for is always changing. I don't just mean society-wise. I mean, those rules are always changing too, but even ourselves and our expectations change as we age and as we gain more experience. And so dating is already really challenging. So, when we're searching for a lot of things in a potential partner, things, sexual attraction, mental and emotional compatibility, common interests or common life goals, maybe even, compatible beliefs on spirituality or politics or, anything else. There's so much out there, right? We're already searching for a lot of those things to come into line. And so if we place a lot of emphasis on searching for perfection on top of all of that, it can really, heighten our sense of frustration. I know I've felt that before. I was raised very much with the idea of soulmates and that they complete you, and this is the ultimate that you should search for. And it colored a lot of my early dating years. It was a very hard thing to find and be up against, and it was devastating sometimes when you think you found that perfect match, and it turned out that it wasn't meant to be. There's a lot of different ideas when it comes to love. And like I sort of said in the beginning, some people think you need to work to maintain long-term relationships, while other people feel that it should be really easy. So which is it, right? The truth of that answer is actually a bit of what you make it. What you believe about love is actually going to influence your decisions and how you approach relationships. It will impact how much you put into your relationships. And this actually will affect, the course and ultimate outcome of your romantic attachments. There's been a fair amount of research that's actually gone into beliefs about love and how it influences our choices in relationships. And it sort of boils down to the two, beliefs about love, whether or not love is our destiny or whether or not it takes work. So, soulmates versus work. And the research has shown that people who hold beliefs that love is our destiny and that, we have soulmates and there's one perfect match for everyone in their life, they are people who tend to think that the test of real love is that it comes easily between two people. So, relationships shouldn't take a lot of work to keep both people happy. If two people are destined to be together, then they should already be compatible and in sync. And many of these people who hold beliefs see conflict in their relationship as a sign that their partner is not meant for them. And arguments tend to be seen as more destructive or threatening. And so people who hold these beliefs about love are actually more likely to end relationships more quickly because they believe their partner is not their perfect mate, and that obviously there's somebody potentially better out there that they will have less arguments with. The sort of rehashing the episode we did a little bit, or I guess not rehashing, but mentioning the episode we did last week about conflict and fights in a relationship. We sort of talked about how fights are not always a bad thing. It's about how we handle those fights. So the flip side of that, of course, is people who believe that love takes work. And research has shown that people who hold that belief about love, they obviously see things very differently. And, challenges that arise and relationships are seen more as barriers to overcome, and people are seen as being able to change and overcome their flaws. So couples who can work and grow together through the conflict and have a stronger relationship. So people who see relationships in this way are actually more likely to stay committed in the relationship even when they may be experiencing some conflict. People who hold this belief that love takes work are actually also more likely to have compromises or be willing to compromise in their relationship. And they see relationship satisfaction as something more to work towards and be achieved by working with their partner. So how these beliefs, impact our relationships really varies, because it can really impact like where you stand on love, really impacts the level of commitment that you can feel in the relationship. And depending on the circumstances, this can either be a good or a bad thing. It's not totally one or the other. If people believe that their perfect soulmate is out there, they may end relationships more quickly at the first signs of trouble. So that can actually be a good thing in the cases of relationships that would develop abusive in an abusive way. But at the same time, when people are completely convinced that particular person is their perfect match, even if they aren't. In some cases, they can actually be willing to put up with even more relationship dissatisfaction and actually be willing to tolerate abuse developing because they believe that this person is their soulmate. So it really depends on a person's belief and their level of commitment. In some cases, people have even been known to tolerate like emotional, verbal, or even physical abuse because they believe this person was their perfect match. So a lot of the time some of this can stem from self-esteems where they don't believe that maybe there's someone else out there for them, or maybe they believe very strongly about that destiny. And, instead of attributing that lack of compatibility, they believe that no amount of effort or communication is going to make a difference in terms of what sort of patterns happen or evolve with our partner, whether or not they're abusive or not. So, it sort of depends like on that person's belief. And, on the flip side, people who believe that love takes work, they also could end up staying in bad relationships because they hope they will continue to grow with their partner, and they hold out the hope that things are going to get better with time. So there's no right or wrong. There's no, one is better than the other, or, it's just how we believe and it's how we interpret the situation. Research suggests that people who see relationships as a matter of growth, they can tend to feel more satisfaction in their relationships because they feel that they can have an influence over, challenges and difficulties that arise. And their sense of control, leads to their feelings of satisfaction when things get resolved. So if things aren't working, it's not because of some unknown force in the universe, but the amount of effort that they put in that they can control. So that's one, I guess, plus side of people who believe that relationships take work is that, there may be more satisfaction because people believe that they have an impact on what's going to happen versus, this is the way things are and no amount of effort is going to change it. So I think that's sort of an important key thing to think about when you're thinking about dating and forming relationships. And if you're someone who believes very strongly in soulmates, or believes very strongly in hard work, you just have to remember that those beliefs may bias you in the relationship, and you need to remain objective. Not everything is going to be great. You shouldn't always stick it out because, this person is your soulmate, or you shouldn't always stick it out because things are going to get better. At the end of the day, it's your life, it's your choice, and you need to make what you think is going to be the best choice for you. Is that always going to be the right choice? Maybe, maybe not. But choices and bad experiences, unfortunately, is part of it, and it's part of how we grow as people as well. So sort of wanted to chat about soulmates. I got a couple of questions that came in this week, and most of them came in anonymously, so I'm not going to mention any names this week. But first one says, what do I do about my ex who's telling everyone I know, including her large Instagram following, that I'm a terrible person, and also telling everyone that she wants to kill herself over the breakup? Wow. That's an intense situation for sure. The first thing you have to realize is that you can't control the actions of other people, only your own. I would say the best bet for you is to take the high road, let your actions speak for themselves. If you choose to engage about it on social media, it's only going to drag it out, and it's going to make there's a huge risk that it can make a much bigger deal. And what stays on social media stays on social media. Social media is having a much larger impact, on how we feel about things. And also, employers and criminal record checks are now starting to look at social media, you know what I mean? It plays a role. So I would be careful about what you post online. If she's the only one posting, the story will pass and it'll become less important. So as far as the social media piece goes, I would just say take the high road, Let your actions speak for themselves. Breakups are almost always difficult and emotional, especially for a person who wasn't ready to call it quits in the relationship. So if she's doing this, obviously she's pretty upset about the breakup. That doesn't mean that you should be taken in by what essentially is emotional blackmail, or potentially could be emotional blackmail, and it's not necessarily always. I have an episode that I recorded on avoiding emotional blackmail. I would recommend going and taking a listen to that. It's going to talk about a couple of different ways you can address emotional blackmail elements. That being said, all suicide threats should be taken very seriously. You should not be forced into providing support and remaining in the relationship against your will by any means. And so please do not feel that you need to do this. However, it is important that support is made available to your ex. If this is not an idle threat, she needs support. This needs to be taken seriously. These kinds of threats should not be made lightly. And even if assuming it's an idle or an empty threat, that kind of undermines people who are actually really in need. I would take it very seriously and I would treat it very seriously. There are plenty of support lines. Make sure that other people in her life have access to these numbers. There's Lifeline Canada, there's Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention, Suicide Prevention Hotline, USA National Suicide and Crisis Hotlines. I would just Google any of those. I don't have them up in front of me at the moment, I'm sorry to say, but, and make sure that people in her life have access to that information, because she clearly needs some support and she obviously is not feeling like she's getting it. If you feel up to it, you can send her a private message with this information. Sometimes extending a little bit of help, a little bit of empathy can be helpful, but just be careful. She may not be open to this information from you, and it can be hard to give better advice. It can be hard to give advice about the situation without knowing about the current stance of your interaction beyond your initial question. But use your judgment, and I would just say be careful. And like I said, go back and go back and listen to the episode on emotional blackmail. There's also a couple articles on my website if you prefer to read about it, exploresextalk.com. I have in a section called emotional abuse, so check that out. I actually do have a section on suicide threats in that and how to handle it. So check out my website for more information. I hope that answered your question, and I hope you come through it, okay. All right, moving on to the next question. How do I talk to my children about the lifestyle and sexual behavior of our president? Talking to your kids about this kind of stuff is super important, because your silence on the matter is actually really kind of making a statement, and the statement is kind of implicit approval. So one of the easiest ways to address questions is to address them as they come up. Don't be afraid to answer them. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know. Or you can talk about what you feel. A lot of people feel very uncomfortable talking about sex with their kids because it seems very taboo. It does not have to be taboo. It should not have to be taboo. This is part of parenting, is talking to your kids and preparing your kids for this kind of stuff. Now, if they aren't asking any questions, you can open the conversation by asking them, what do they think or feel about this behavior? How they respond is really going to guide you to the next part of the conversation. And, a good way to help kids navigate their emotions on the subject is to help them walk through their own feelings about it. So, ask clarifying questions, ask them to explain in more detail why they think or feel in that particular way about it. You could ask them how they would feel if they were put in a similar position by a man acting in such a way, and what they would do about it. Having these conversations and discussions is going to give you the opportunity to share your opinion with them as well. And that's going to form, their opinion a little bit, of course, right? So, I know it's an intense conversation, but try and keep it light and open. If you notice during the conversation, that their interest starts to drift, just remind them that you're always open to talking about stuff or answering questions if they have any. And, the more you can keep the conversation kind of light and relaxed and easy, the more likely they are to approach you in the future about this and related subjects. I do have a couple articles on parenting and sex ed on my website. There's a section for it, so check that out. That has a little bit more detail. And I think, we did an episode on parenting and sex ed a little while back too. So I hope that helps. All right, last question of the day is, if a woman had sex with a man with HIV, will she test positive after 2 weeks? Potentially, but STIs can actually take up to 3 months to show in a test result. So if someone has potentially been exposed to HIV, they can go to the hospital for a dose of antivirals, which I can honestly tell you is no picnic. It's dependent on the risk level. I think it's up to 28 days of medication. And it kind of makes you feel like garbage, but it is better. If there's a concern or a risk, then, and you want to avoid that, then I would definitely go to the hospital, talk to them about it, or go to your doctor, talk to them about it. But it can take up to 3 months to show on a blood panel. And if someone is going to be engaged in a relationship with someone who's HIV positive, they can actually, there's so much we can do for HIV now. It is, not only is it not the death sentence that it used to be, thank God, but there's also a lot of things we can do about prevention and preventing transmission. Like, for example, someone who is not HIV positive can get a prescription for a drug called PrEP. They've been running commercials on this on TV in the last, I think, year or 2 years. You may have seen it. But it's a pill that you can take every day that reduces the risk of transmission. And someone who's HIV positive, there's a whole bunch of stuff that they can do to, one, manage the HIV infection. In fact, someone who's HIV positive who works with their doctor can achieve a status called HIV undetectable, where they have the right balance of medication. And what that means is that even though they're HIV positive and they're taking all the meds for it, if they were to take a test, they would actually test negative because the virus is so well managed in their system that there's no trace of it in their blood, which means that there's very low risk of transmission, which is great. And also very low risk that HIV will evolve and turn into AIDS, which is also great. So very cool. Also, of course, safer sex methods can always reduce that risk as well. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Of course, new episodes come out every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone. Tell somebody about this podcast. Download it. Follow, like, subscribe. Do all that good stuff so that I know that you are enjoying it, because that will keep this podcast alive. If you're looking for more content, please check out my website, exploresextalk.com. I have over 90 articles, I think, right now on sex education. If you're looking for a little bit extra, you can become a Sexy Hero, which is a paid membership that gives you access to all of my content, which is well over in excess of, I think, 300 articles and games and puzzles and all sorts of goodness. So please check that out. It's for a low Canadian $20 a month. All right. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you all next week on the 25th. Have a fantastic week, everybody. Take care.